So, Mothership 11 Sunlit Seduction. What do we think? I was thinking about taking one for the team. I was going to pick it up and do a video on it, but I'm sorry, y'all. I could not justify spending that much money on something I already have multiple times over. I'm just going to try to recreate it with stuff I have in my own collections. And then I made my own imaginary Mothership palette that I think should have been Mothership 11. So I'm going to show you that. Maybe I'll do one look with my actual attempt at a dupe and one look with my imaginary Mothership. I went through my collection and I pulled all the potential shades I think could stand in for the shades in the palette. So I'm just going by the pictures that we have. I'll pop them up on the screen. I think it's just like one swatch photo and then one photo of the palette itself. Historically, I have been really harsh whenever Pat McGrath reveals a palette and I end up buying them. I did this with Utopian Dream and I did this with Moonlit Seduction, and I actually really like both of those palettes. So I'm not completely ruling it out, but just based on what I've seen so far, there's absolutely no way I'm spending 135 doll hairs on that. I'm sorry. Let's go through and shade by shade we'll try to dupe this out, and then I'm going to show you my imaginary palette. So the first shade in the palette is called Skin Tense Radiant. Every Pat McGrath palette has a shade like this. It's one of their highlighting shades, and it's usually just like a champagne with a pearlescent finish, and they usually have slightly different undertone depending on the palette. I just pulled this one from the Moonlit Seduction palette because I feel like it's the most neutral, so it's probably the safest bet. It's literally just a pearly off-white shade. So we'll pop that in. The next shade underneath that is called Extreme Vermilion Dusk. This one's a little puzzling to me because in the palette picture on her website, it does look like more of a deep plummy brown, but then in the swatches, it looks more purple. I went with Groove from the Natasha Denona Retro Midi palette. I mean, it's definitely very like mauve-y / plummy, but it does have a little bit of neutrality to it. So I feel like this is probably very similar to what the shade in the palette will be. Let's just get through the mattes because this is a boring part, and then I have multiple options for each of the shimmers. So then the next one is called Nude Rose, and honestly, in the swatch and the picture, it just looked like this one from the Utopian Dream palette. I forget the name of it, but it's the pink shade. So bloop, we'll just pop that in. And then the last matte is called Sienna Mystique, and to me, it looked like the deepest shade in the Utopian Dream palette. Oh, sorry, I should swatch these for you. Here's the pink one from Utopian Dream, and then here's the other one from Utopian Dream. So, I don't know, I could be way off. It's really hard to tell what the mattes will actually look like based on the pictures they have, but that's what we're going with. Okay, I think I have these backwards. The shade right here is called Copper Dawn. Is it called Copper? Yeah, it's called Copper Dawn, so it's actually supposed to be with this row. It doesn't look super coppery to me, either in the pan or in the swatch. I guess. It looks more just like a beige with a slightly warm undertone, or even a little bit of gold to it. So I have 3 potential shades pulled. I have, which one are you? So the first option I have is Social Butterfly from Looxi. And this is a warm neutral. It has a lot of dimension to it though. And I feel like this is honestly a lot more exciting than what the shade in the Pat McGrath palette would be. This would be more likely in the special shade section, but it's a contender. Next, I have Silk from the Natasha Denona Bronze palette, the more realistic option. I think this is what it's probably going to look like in the actual palette. It's, again, I would consider this a warm neutral, but it does have that bit of like orange gold to it. So I guess it is in that copper realm. And then the last one I have is this one from the Moonlit Seduction palette. I think this is too cool toned. So it's like a metallic beige. It has a little bit of gold to it, but I don't think that's the one. I think probably this one, Silk, is the most realistic option. I think I understand what this palette is supposed to be. It seems to be like the softer, more warm tone version of the Moonlit Seduction palette. So I understand what they're trying to do, but I mean, if you look at it in the context of all the other palettes that have come out in the last few years, it's so redundant, but it must be selling. I mean, there must be a reason why she keeps coming out with the same palettes, or they keep coming out with the same palettes over and over, because people are buying them. So I do understand, but just won't get my money. Okay, so let's go with Silk from the Bronze palette. Okay. The next one is called Hypnotic Bronze, and this just looks like a warm mid-tone brown. So I have this one from the Utopian Dream palette. I don't have the names of these memorized. They're not anywhere on the palette. Like, they're only in the box. So anyway, it's a warm mid-tone brown. So that's probably the strongest option, but let's see what else I pulled. This is the Monarch from Looxi. Again, this is probably more exciting, but overall it's a warm brown. So here's this. Again, very similar, just more exciting, and it has a shift to it. And then, I don't know why I pulled this one. This is from Glam Shop. It's called Cherry Praline. Yeah, it's called Cherry Praline. And it's a lot more red. It's got like a burgundy base, and then it has some suspended sparkles over top of it. So out of the three, based on the swatches and the photos we have available, this one from the Utopian Dream palette looks the most similar. So, bloop. Come on, tell me this doesn't look like every other Pat McGrath palette that already exists. And it's already mostly Pat McGrath's. Anyway, now this is going to be a more exciting part. We're going to do special shades. So the first one is called Astral Pink Fetish. And it looks to me like a pale pink with maybe a bit of a gold flip. So I have 3 shades pulled. The first one I have is Celestial Petal from Terra. This doesn't have a gold flip to it, but it's a beautiful pale pink with a bunch of multicolored sparkles in it. It shifts like blue and purple. I mean, it could work, but I think one of the other 2 I have pulled is probably more similar to what we'll see in the palette. So the next one I have is Reserve 2 from Shine by SD. And this is a sheer pink with a gold flip to it. And Shine by SD I found is actually one of the most similar formulas to the Pat McGrath special shades. Shades tend to be on the drier side, and a lot of them are more flaky, especially the ones in the Reserve collection. So this might be the best option, but the third one I have here is Sunbeam from Clionadh. This is repanned. It's another pink with a gold flip. This is an exact color dupe to the pink in the Utopian Dream palette. I think probably Reserve 2 is going to be closest to what's in the palette. So with these 2, you don't really see the pink base as much. You mostly just see those shifts. And it looks like in the swatch that is on the Pat McGrath website, you do see a lot of the pink still in the shade. So I'm going to go with Reserve 2 from Shine by SD. And this is a dupe to Andromeda from Terra Moons. I don't have that shade, but I know they're dupes, so if you have that. Next one is called Astral Amethyst Allure, and it looks like a mauve. I don't really see any shifts or anything to it, but those aren't always shown on the swatch pictures on the Pat McGrath website. So I actually had kind of a hard time trying to find something similar to this. So I pulled 3. The first one is Cider. Thank you to everyone who corrected me in my Clionadh video. I was pronouncing that wrong. This is Cider from the Clionadh Stained Glass collection. It's from their Dimensionals line. This was gifted to me from the brand. And this is a pale magenta, and it shifts to gold and green, and it has a ton, I don't know if you can see, a ton of multicolored sparkles in it. I'll link my video about the Dimensionals below. God, this is so beautiful. Okay. This type of shift is very common, like in the Pat McGrath palettes that have multichromes. They are very similar shifts to this. This is Yearning Voice from Shellwe. Such a beautiful shade. This was also sent to me in PR. It's like a mauve that has a ton of different flecks of sparkle. Can you see? And does it shift? I think it just shifts to, okay, it shifts to gold and a tiny bit of green. A lot softer. This is probably closer to what the one in the palette will look like. God, both of these are so beautiful. The last one I have pulled is from Glam Shop, and it's called Global Glam. And this is another, like, mauve. It doesn't really have any shifts to it. Actually, it does shift gold. I think I'm going to do Yearning Voice from Shellwe. The Clionadh one looks a little bit deeper than the one that they have shown on the website. So I'm going to do the Shellwe one. So this is Yearning Voice from Shellwe Makeup. Again, I have these backwards. So the next one is called Blitz Crimson Ecstasy. And I have 3 shades pulled. First one is WR124. I always have to say it in that voice because of this episode of SpongeBob.
SB129.
Terra Moons. This was sent to me in PR. Sorry, I'm not doing a good job of showing you this. And I think this is more of an aggressive pink than the one in the palette will be. It's a very flaky pink to gold to green shade from, I think this is from their summer, yes, this is from their summer release. And then I also have another Terra Moon shade called Crimson Eclipse, which I think is probably going to be the closest. And this is a red to gold to green, but it's like a magenta leaning red. And I don't think the one in the palette will have any shifts to it, but I don't really have any shades like this that aren't shifty. And then this is from Shine by SD. It's called No Choice. This was also sent to me in PR. And it's another really sparkly pink. And it shifts to, I think I see a blue shift. Yeah, it just has I think I see mostly like a teal and blue shift to this. But more than anything, it just has a bunch of dimensional, multicolored sparkles. So I feel like I'm going to do Crimson Eclipse. Because it appears that the one in the palette is more of a softer magenta. And these are more like aggressive fuchsias. So there you go. The last one in this is called Astral Gilded Aura, and it looks like she has a shade like this in so many of her palettes. It's just like a very sparkly, pale gold, like wet looking shade. So I have 3 options. I have first Goddess from Glam Shop. Looks a little bit too pale. It's like a champagne with multicolored sparkles in it. And actually, no, the one in the palette looks a lot more gold forward, so no. This is the gold special shade from the Moonlit Seduction palette. I think this is probably the closest one. I mean, that looks pretty spot on for the swatch I have. And then I also have this one from the Moonlit Seduction palette, which is definitely, it's not sparkly enough and it's way too champagne-y. So I think we're going to go with this. I mean, I'm sure there will be differences between this and the one in the Sunlit Seduction palette. It's hard to tell from what we have available now, so I'm just going to go with this. And here is my palette. Let me know, how do you think I did? I don't know if more information about the palette will be available when I upload this video, but I'm going to put this up. I'm going to put the other palette on top and this on the bottom. Okay, now let's swatch the whole thing. Here is my attempt to dupe the new palette just based on the swatch pictures we've seen. I'm going to pop up a picture of the swatches on the fairest skin tone and we'll see how they compare. Let me know, how do you think I did? I think I was off on the mattes. It's so hard to tell what they're going to actually look like, but I think some of these shimmers, I did a pretty good job of trying to dupe them based on the pictures we have. Just to reiterate, we have the highlight shade from Moonlit Seduction, Natasha Denona Groove from the Midi Retro palette, the pink shade from Pat McGrath Utopian Dream, Silk from the Natasha Denona Bronze palette, the bronze shade from Utopian Dream, the deepest shade from Utopian Dream, Shine by SD Reserve 2, Shellwe Makeup Yearning Voice, Terra Moon's Crimson Eclipse, and then the sparkly gold special shade from Midnight or Moonlight Seduction, I forget already. It's really easy to sit back and criticize the new Mothership, but I feel like it only goes so far unless I can show what I would do instead, and this is what I would have loved to see for a new Mothership palette personally. So here's my thought process. I was thinking, okay, Sunlit Seduction, so I was kind of thinking of colors of like sunrise, sunlight, but also like seduction, so I kind of like toned it down, made it a little sultry, a little smoky. I have some gold, some orange, some pink. So let me swatch it all together. I'm going to tell you like what I would do with this palette, and then maybe I'll do a demo of a look. See, this is why I repan my Clionadh shades, because this is so annoying. I don't know if I want to repan my newest ones yet. I kind of like them in their little squares right now. Anyway, I digress. So first we have, this is Fogbow from my collab with Shine by SD. This has the pink to gold shift to it. And you'll see how this kind of ties into other stuff. So this will be my take on a highlight shade. This is Livid from Dandylions Co. And this is like a deep gray, but it's not quite black. I feel like that's just a little bit more approachable for me. This is Honesty from Sydney Grace, which I know is like a boring shade, but I was trying to think of something I would realistically use. And a shade like this I would definitely use in a lot of looks. Next, this is Cold Brew from Dandylions Co. And this is such a unique undertone, and I love using shades like this as a base to put topper shades on top of. Next is Hot Spice Cider from Terra, which is a duochrome. It has like a reddish base. And then it shifts gold to green. See, like this color story is already getting me so hyped. Okay, next, Angel Wings, which I recently got from Looxi Beauty, and I feel like this is just a perfect topper shade for like anything. So much dimension for a $3 eyeshadow. Next, this is Oxidize from Clionadh. This is from their new Dimensionals line. This was sent to me in PR. Again, I'll link my video about these below. And I thought this was like a little bit of a wild card, but it still works with the others because you'll see what I mean. I could just see myself using this in a lot of different ways along with these other shades. Next, I have Deimos from Terra, and again, this is still in that like pink family. This actually probably would have worked for that actual dupe palette, but I already had it in this one. So again, like there's this pink thread going through everything, and also there's like this warm orangey thread. And finally, this is Lynx from Devinah. Here are the swatches of my proposed Mothership 11. I feel like it's still sultry. It still has that pink presence. Kind of gives me sunlit vibes while not being like a literal interpretation of a sunrise. There's so much I can do with this. I feel like you can go kind of more colorful. You can keep it neutral. I just really love this palette. I'm a little bit biased, but let me show you some ways I would use it. Okay, so we're just gonna have a little bit of fun with like layering stuff. So one thing I would do is I would take Cold Brew and use it as a base for a lot of things. Like if you wanted just like an everyday neutral type of look, you could tap Angel Wings on top of Cold Brew, and then you have this beautiful sparkly neutral look. I could also take Hot Spice Cider and tap on Lynx on top of that. And again, this just adds a little bit of dimension and sparkle for a beautiful sparkly gold look. I would use Deimos, Oxidize, and Fogbow together. I would probably put Fogbow on my inner corner and then deepen up with Livid. You could also just do, if you want like a really easy simple look, you could do Honesty in the crease and then just do Angel Wings in the center of your lid. Like Cold Brew with any of these as a topper, Fogbow on top. You could even do Hot Spice Cider. You could do Angel Wings. I think we already did this. Oxidize. Deimos. Or finally, we might as well just go through all of them. Lynx. Like, all of these are so stunning. But anyway, that's my take on Mothership 11, I think. Okay, so we're going to start with demoing my imaginary palette. I started off with Honesty from Sydney Grace, and I'm just applying it all over my crease with a big fluffy brush, bringing what's left over on the brush out into my outer corner. Then I'm taking Cold Brew from Dandylions Co with a tapered fluffy brush and applying it all over my lid, and that's going to serve as a base for the next shade that I'm going to put on. Don't look too close at my nail, thank you. I'm taking Oxidize from Clionadh, and I'm tapping it all over that base I created with Cold Brew from Dandylions Co. That way it's a little more approachable. Then I'm taking Fogbow, and I'm taking a flat brush and starting on my inner corner. Then I'm going to take what's left over on the brush and kind of apply it as a transition between Oxidize and the matte. Then I'm taking Brilliant Realm from Sydney Grace and using that to deepen up the outer corner. I was out of frame, but I put that on my lower lash line, what was left on the brush. Then I took Honesty and blended that out. Okay, here's the final look. I know this palette doesn't actually exist, but people have asked for some more tutorials, so I thought maybe this would be fun if you have something similar in your collection. Now I'm demoing my actual dupe palette. We're starting with Secret Eden from Utopian Dream, and I'm putting that all over my crease in the same way, taking Bronze Desire from Utopian Dream, and I started with my finger to kind of make this as the base as well. Then I ended up taking that tapered brush and kind of diffusing it along the edges. Then I'm taking Crimson Eclipse from Terra Moons, going with a flat brush on the outer half of my eyelid. Then I'm taking Yearning Voice from Shellwe Makeup, and I'm out of frame for part of this, so sorry, but then I took the tapered brush and diffused it out. I took Xtreme Plum Noir from Utopian Dream and used that to deepen up the outer corner of my eyelid, and I took what was left over on the brush and put it on my lower lash line. And finally, I took Astral Gold Lust from Mothership 10, and I put it as a wash between my crease and my brow bone, and that's it. Another simple look, but I like how it came out. So here are my two palettes together. Let me know, which one do you like better? I'm partial to the top one, obviously. What would you want to see as Mothership 11? Like, what would be your ideal Mothership palette? Also, thank you, Cassie, for the idea to create my own version of a Mothership. That's going to be it for this video. I hope you liked it, hanging out with me while I talk about makeup. Please give it a thumbs up if you did. Please subscribe to my channel if you're not already. Other than that, I will see you in the next one. Bye!